Hi, welcome to the Premier League preview show, the very last one of 2023. My name is Nathan Carl. Many thanks for joining us. This is the primer, the best primer you can find as you head into another weekend of Premier League action, which is, I think, the last weekend really of Premier League action of the calendar year 2023. So it's been a very interesting ride from January till today, and many thanks for being with us. Of course, the games are live on Citi 97.3 FM, and it will be the same this match week as the calendar year comes to an end. And if you have any thoughts or comments, you can send them to us via the WhatsApp number on your screen, 020-444-7033, hashtag Citi Sports, and we'll go through as many of those comments as possible before the show comes to an end in about an hour. We'll take a very quick break. When we come back, I'll introduce my guest and we will start rolling. This is the Premier League preview show on Citi TV. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. This is the Premier League preview show on Citi TV. Merry Christmas, everybody. I'm sure the holidays have been good for you. Let me introduce my guests in studio. I've got Kwame Safo. Kwame, how are you doing?
I'm good, Nathan.
Merry
Yourself?
Christmas.
Same to you. Many happy returns.
All right. And joining us online via the Zoom, because he can't be in studio with us, you know, for other reasons which I will not disclose. Susu Graham is joining us. Susu, how are you doing? Merry Christmas.
Many happy returns. Many happy.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll have other guests potentially joining us as the show goes along. Like we always do, let's have a look at the fixtures for match week 19 of the Premier League. Game week 20, yes, 20. So 19 is done. So officially we are at the halfway stage of the league. We're about to start the second half of the Premier League. So the fixtures: Luton versus Chelsea, Crystal Palace taking on Brentford, Man City will take on Sheffield, Villa will face Burnley, Everton take on Wolves, Nottingham Forest face Manchester United, and then on Sunday, Fulham will face Arsenal, Spurs take on Bournemouth, Liverpool face Newcastle, West Bromwich Albion take on Brighton and Hove. West Ham, East London, West Ham, sorry. They take on Brighton and Hove Albion. Very interesting results all of these teams have been involved in match week 19 spread across the Christmas week. Let's start off with our very first game. Let's talk about Luton versus Chelsea. That game is at Kenilworth Road. Chelsea, I believe, won the reverse fixture at Stamford Bridge. I remember that. It wasn't too far away.
3-0.
3-0, I believe it was. And Chelsea have to do it again against Luton. Safo, let me start off with you. It's been a very interesting December for Chelsea. The last time they played, they had to hold off Crystal Palace. It was a bit of a battle, but eventually Noni Madueke's penalty was the difference there. As the second half of the league starts and as Chelsea travel to Kenilworth Road, what should be the plan really for Mauricio Pochettino? He's trying to get a winning run going as the second half of the season starts.
I mean, a week ago, we spoke about Chelsea facing Wolves. And I quite remember we accurately predicted that they were not going to win at Wolves. That also came off the backdrop of a very wonderful midweek because they had beaten Newcastle then in the League Cup. The thing with this week's performance against Crystal Palace is, I think Chelsea's problem has always been the same. They always underperform their XGs. Their expected goals, their front line is not firing. And with the addition of Nkunku this week, you could see this gulf of difference in the quality of the attackers Chelsea as a football club possesses. So, I mean, every manager would want his team to win. I think Mauricio Pochettino wants Chelsea to win. He really needs that back-to-back win eagerly. But the problem is the venue they are going to. Luton has had this sort of renaissance, especially at home. We've seen Man City go there and struggle to win. We've seen Liverpool go there and
Liverpool got a point.
They got a point. They couldn't win that game.
Arsenal
they came from behind.
Almost got a point. Luton almost got a point. Let me put it that way until Declan Rice.
So it's not. And even this week, Luton came behind to beat Sheffield in a game that seemed like they were done and dusted. Whether it is Adebayo, whether it's Carlton Morris, they just seem to have a way to perform. So it's not going to be an easy game, and it's also going to be a game Chelsea is expected to dominate, and that has been the problem with Chelsea throughout this season. They dominate, but very shaky defensively. So it's going to be an interesting game to watch. But too early to predict. I know that Mauricio Pochettino would want to have a winning run, but it's not going to be that easy. That's something we must see.
Okay, all right. I'll get to Susu in a second, but our other guest has joined us. Emmanuel, Emmanuel, how are you doing? Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
All right, Susu, let me. I'll come back to Emmanuel in a bit. Susu, let me get your thoughts on this. It's been, like I said earlier, roller coaster for Mauricio Pochettino. His team will play well and sometimes win, sometimes they won't win, sometimes they won't show up at all. What should they do as they go to Luton Town? A ground that's, like Safo said, it's been a little tricky for some of these top sides. Man City had to find a way to win. Arsenal had to keep Luton at arm's length, to get that late winner. For Chelsea, how do you think this game will play out as they start the second half of the season?
You've also forgot to add that Liverpool also failed to win.
Yeah, Liverpool, yeah.
So it's like they are doing some good work there. Don't get me wrong. I believe the issue for them is more the quality is not really there. Their team is not as good as the other teams in the Premier League. So they are just struggling to keep up in that way. But look, I think they have a strategy. They have a way they want to play. And Chelsea have to be wary of that. And they are going to be very physical. So the Chelsea back, I don't believe this again for Thiago Silva. I believe at his age, with his physical profile on the decline, he shouldn't play this game because Luton are going to get in your face. They are going to be physical. They are going to use all the tools available to them because they know on a technical and skill level, they are a level below. So they are going to try and make up for that in the physical side. So that's where it's going to be very important for Chelsea to hold down. And they have to take their chances. And the truth about Chelsea is that's the biggest problem. I believe there's a lot of games that Chelsea, I would say Pochettino will coach a win in the sense that they create enough chances, they create the opportunity, they carve the other team open, but they don't take their chance. And the other team does enough to keep in the game and takes one chance. So for me, I really believe that Chelsea can win this match very easily, but they need to be on point. They need to play their best possible game, or it's going to be a very difficult one.
All right, so let me just stay with you. You make a point about chances not being taken. What do you think is that? What do you think is down to? Is it a lack of technical quality, defenses that are stubborn, goalkeepers that are resilient? What exactly is the problem with Chelsea? We do admit they create the chances, but why are they not putting the chances away?
I don't like to single out a player, but Nicholas Jackson is the biggest example of this because Nicholas Jackson has got, 6 goals, I believe. But if you look at his XG, it's closer to like 7, 8. The chances are there for him. They are coming. But if you were to give those chances to Son or Erling Haaland, instead of 6 goals, they'd have 9 or 10. That's really what the issue with a lot of the Chelsea players are. They're a bit raw. So that finishing ability, that kind of decision-making the final third. Enzo, he's taking a lot of shots. He's missing. So there's a lot of players who are getting the right positions. The chances are there for them, and they are not taking them. And when your lead striker is as wasteful as Nicholas Jackson is, it's a problem. Because he's the one you look to as, quote-unquote, the best finisher in the team, take the chances, and he's not taking them. So it's very difficult. And then you have some of the more experienced players like Raheem Sterling who are not really pulling their weight. I think Sterling is one of the best wingers we've seen the last decade in the Premier League. He's won the most penalties in Premier League history. If you look at him, there's how many seasons where he scored 10 goals consecutively. There was a long streak of that. Yeah. So he's a very good winger. But since he came to Chelsea, we've not seen the Sterling that was one of the best players in the Premier League. And that, again, is part of the problem. So young players who are struggling to kind of find their feet, experienced players who are either on the decline or not performing. So it's a recipe for disaster. So they just need to take their chances, which is easy to say in principle, but as we can see, it's easier said than done because you can see other players like Rasmus Højlund having a similar problem where you are young, the chances are coming, you are not taking them, then your confidence starts to boost. It's a difficult one, but if Nicholas Jackson just improves his finishing even 30%, I believe Chelsea will win about 50% more games just because they are very good at making more chances than the opposition, but they're not good at taking those chances.
Interesting. Mauricio Pochettino, he's got work on his hands as Chelsea take on Luton Town at Kenilworth Road. We'll see. Very exciting game on paper. We'll see what happens. Let's get to the second game on our hop around. It's a London-based game, really. This is on the western side of London as Fulham take on Arsenal have had to endure an odd end to match week 19. They took on West Ham at the Emirates. It didn't go well for them at all. Let's enjoy the highlights of Arsenal's 2-0 home loss to West Ham. All right, so Arsenal losing 2-0 to West Ham at the Emirates. Emmanuel, let me bring you in. Thank you so much for joining us. Arsenal are going to take on Fulham. Fulham are one of the few teams to have come to the Emirates in the first half of the season and walk away with the points. I remember they drew that game 2-2.
I think they even took the lead.
Yes, Joao Palhinha scored. And now Arsenal, they've lost this game. Now they have to go to... What do they do? Because Fulham can be very crazy. They can be very tricky to handle.
Well, I do think they need to take their chances. With the highlights we just saw, it's not for a lack of creation that they lost that game. Just in the first half, I think Saka had 2 or 3 chances, which if he had scored, it changed the fortunes of this game. But it's a win or loss business. If you don't score, the opponent scores, they win. And even with the preview to this game, which I think we did on radio, we all knew how these teams were going to set up. West Ham were going to be very difficult to play against. And if you watch how they played within the width of the 18-yard box and only engaged Arsenal when they came out wide. And I do not understand why Arsenal were still trying to go wide, bringing more wide men. You look at the substitutions they brought in. You brought in Smith, Rowe, Reece, and they were all going wide. And they should have tried to penetrate,
Could it not be that maybe Mikel Arteta thought the central area is clogged, so go wide, try and pull West Ham?
It was clearly not working because if you look at the chances they created, even in the second half, so the Jesus chance, the shots from Odegaard, those shots came from central areas where, because of interpositional movements in place, you draw defenders out, and then now you have to find spaces in between. If you look at Alvarez, he had to do a lot of covering, and because Arsenal were pretty much playing the ball out wide, it gave him room to be able to do what he had to do. And for me, he was the man of the match. But going to Fulham, this is actually the best time to go to Fulham.
They are not in a good place.
I think after 2 5-0 back-to-back wins, they've lost 3 on the trot, conceding 8 without scoring. So if you are Arsenal, this is actually a very good time to travel there. I think they've won at Fulham for their last 12 visits or so. They're unbeaten there. So you just need to go there and impose your will. And Arsenal have won just 1 in their last 4. And if you are going to better what you did last season, if you want to be called a league contender and not a pretender, these are some of the games you would have to win. You didn't expect them to lose against West Ham. Yes, the odd draw against Liverpool is very hard to win at Anfield, but if you are going to Fulham, and especially when you want to respond with the way you lost, they'll need to do something. They'll need to be more effective. For me, Saka has also not been too impressive in his last 3 or 4 games. Looks like he's... And I think generally Arsenal are not scoring enough. I think their highest scorer is Nketiah.
Yeah,
it's 5 goals.
Saka and Nketiah.
5 each.
I don't think it's enough.
I read this story. I read this quote attributed to Gary Neville talking about the fact that he said that Saka, Martinelli, Gabi Jesus not combining enough was a problem, and if Arsenal didn't rectify it, they would pay.
You see, when it says not combining enough, we saw this same trio combining the whole of last season, and they were very good at it.
I think I was talking about the fact that they haven't clicked this season.
You see, I feel like partly Odegaard's absence, because Odegaard seems to have dipped, and he's now back, and if you watch yesterday's game, let me just give a touch shortly on the game. In as much as Arsenal didn't score, they should have scored in that game. You can't take anything away from how well drilled West Ham were. You watch West Ham's defense, they don't even go in for tackles. What they tried doing was squeezing spaces. So if Odegaard gets the ball, there are 2-3 players around preventing him from taking a shot. They don't launch him for the tackles. You'd expect Arsenal to face these tests and challenge. They faced that all season. They faced same last season. But they were able to triumph during that. And you ask yourself, what exactly is happening? You see, the thing is this. It doesn't matter how many times they combine. If you have an arrowhead who is not a defensive striker, who is just an arrowhead, because teams like Manchester City faced the same test all the time. I remember City against Leicester last season. Leicester were camped in their box the whole of that game. But players like Erling Haaland found a way to score with the little bit opportunity they got. And I think that's the same thing that was happening. They tend to depend on the likes of Declan Rice this season to come in from the midfield to score. And yes, because you look at players like Saka, Martinelli, they are not that old too. They are very young players. A player like Saka has been utilized like the way Pedri has been utilized. So they are going to have moments like this, and it's understandable. But it's the football business, and you are trying to win the Premier League against a Manchester City side that has won like 3 trophies in a season. So it's the expectations will be high. And so, in as much as you'd want to blame the trio for not combining, you have to ask yourself questions about why even Saka is the one who's getting most goals, or Martinelli. What's the number 9 doing? What's the arrowhead supposed to do in this?
Interesting. So let me bring you in. I tweeted something and I mentioned you last night that in relation to Gabriel Jesus. So now, what does Mikel Arteta do? Arsenal need to respond very quickly to the episode at the Emirates against West Ham. They go to Fulham, and like we've said, Fulham are in a very horrible place. They are not playing well. But if you were Fulham, would you look at yesterday's performance and take some consolation that if we are drilled or as well drilled as West Ham were, they could probably run away with a point? Can that happen? And on the reverse, what do Arsenal do to sharpen that front line if they will start getting lots more than they are getting in the league?
Well, for me, the way I see it, like we said, Fulham are in bad form. I just don't see them being able to get results. Because if we are being very, very honest, last game that they got the 2-2 is one of those games that we can categorize it as a game Arsenal threw away. They created enough to win. Yeah. They didn't take their chances. So for me, I don't see Fulham as a credible threat, because if you are lucky to get a result the first time, it doesn't mean that the second time you really show something off, and then now you're in bad form. It should be an easy win for Arsenal. They should be able to get their confidence back. But Safo made a very good point. There's not enough goals. You have Nketiah and Saka with 5 goals each. But in open play, Saka has only 3 goals. Yeah. And you talk about Gabriel Jesus, he has 2-3 goals. Declan Rice has 3, and I think Jesus has 2. Martinelli has 2. So the 4 players are not doing what they're supposed to. They're supposed to score. They're supposed to deliver. And it's very unfortunate because they had Martinelli and Odegaard delivering a lot of goals last season. We are not seeing this season. Because both players scored 15 goals each last season. Okay. And this season, we are not really seeing them get into the goals. That's a problem. You have Saka, who also got in the teens last season. He doesn't seem to be on the same pace. Because remember, we played 19 games. So if we played 19 games, Odegaard and Martinelli should be around 7-8 if they are to equal last season. Saka should be maybe on 6-7 to get into that range. If Gabriel Jesus has 2, it means you're telling me that the whole season you get 4. That's not good enough. I mean, we all know football doesn't work like that. It's not about extrapolation and statistics and trends. Things can build up. You can get into form, but it should just tell you how poor they've been this first half of the season in terms of goals. I can understand that, okay, if they spread it out, Havertz is doing some here, this person is doing some here, but that reliable goal scorer, because look at Man City. In a pinch, they can look at Erling Haaland. Liverpool, in a pinch, they can look at Mo Salah. They have a player that they can. Who do you think Arsenal can look at in a pinch to get a goal? Wow. The player who's been most clutch, to use that word, I don't like that word in football, but that's not the point. But the clutch player we've seen this season seems to be Declan Rice. Because he got that goal against Man U. Then he also got the goal against Wheaton. So he seems to be the person coming up with goals. But that's not his job. He's there to break and pass. So the front line is just not getting things right. I think Arsenal are trying to win the league by being defensive, but I feel like they've overdone it. They've gone too far in one direction, and now the goals are suffering. So that's a problem for them. So I believe they are in a similar position to Chelsea. Just so happens that their defense is so much better than Chelsea's. That lack of chances is not being highlighted. Chelsea are not very solid defensively, just to go back, and they are creating chances. But Arsenal they are not finishing. And that's what will cause them, because this title race is by the margins. Because you have Man City who are having probably their worst season about 3-4 years.
And they are still in the mix. They're still in the mix.
Not far off at all.
They are not far off at all.
Yes, therefore they take, and Arsenal are not able to kind of push on it. And it's very disappointing, because from what I've seen for most of the 19 games this season, I would say Arsenal have been the best team, despite their challenges, because I think their patterns are there, the defensive solidity is there. there's some close games that should have been won, they didn't win. And it's interesting because those close games, they won them last season because they basically lost 10 points from this stage last season. You know, they would have, so at this point, they have what? Is it 40 points?
40 points.
Right now?
No,
Yeah,
right
last
now,
season
no,
they
right
had.
now, I think they have, the difference is
Right
not
now
much.
they have
It's about
40.
just 3 or 4
About
points.
two, yeah.
From last season at the same
they had,
stage.
Last season they had 50 at this point. That's disappointing because we saw them last year. Like, oh, these people are trying, and then this season's like they are not able to keep up the momentum. It's disappointing. But look, I still believe they have a very good chance of winning the title. If they're able to work some 1 or 2 things out, I believe that they are still favorites for me. I'm backing Arsenal still for the title, but because I believe that these fixes are not too drastic. They can be made.
Okay, all right, we'll see. It's Fulham versus Arsenal at Craven Cottage. That's happening over the weekend. Let's look at our last game of our hop around, and it's Liverpool versus Newcastle. Now, Liverpool won the reverse fixture a few months ago. I think one of my favorite games of the season, and I was so happy for Darwin. Darwin Núñez came off the bench and, you know, scored that goal and all of that. We'll see. Emmanuel, let me get your thoughts. Liverpool have had a very interesting. All right, let's look at Liverpool's last outing when they played in the league. I think they played at Burnley.
Yeah.
Yes, let's get that highlight as Liverpool won their last game in the Premier League. All right, so Diogo Jota and Darwin Núñez scoring as Liverpool beat Burnley by 2-0, all in preparation for Newcastle's visit to Anfield as Liverpool host the Magpies. We'll take a very quick break. This is the Premier League preview show. We'll take a very quick break. When we come back, we'll get into talk of that one. Very interesting game, Premier League classic to be served at Anfield involving Liverpool and Newcastle. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. This is the Premier League preview show on Citi TV. My name is Nathan Kwame. My guest, Kwame Safo, Emmanuel Nubo, they are both in studio. Suso Graham joining us via the Zoom. Emmanuel, let me take your thoughts on this one. Liverpool, Newcastle. It's always an exciting game. Yeah. Very, very exciting at Anfield. Most of the time, Liverpool wins. I've not seen a Newcastle win at Anfield.
I don't think. In 27 visits,
27 visits, they are yet to win. And after losing to Nottingham Forest, the heat is on them. They need to find a performance at Anfield. So let's first talk about the Newcastle side of things. We'll come to Liverpool. It's a very horrible time to go to Anfield, isn't it? You just got done 3-1 at home by Nottingham Forest. You have to go to Anfield.
And not to take anything away from Nottingham Forest, they were very impressive in that game. And for me personally, I didn't know Chris Wood was such a good finisher. All 3 goals were exceptionally taken.
Yeah, very good goals.
For Newcastle, I remember saying last season that it could be that Champions League football came in too early for them.
Okay.
Just judging by how they escaped, let me say, they escaped relegation the season before this, I think top 4 came in a bit too early for them. And that has been their undoing this season. The pressure of playing in the Champions League, the high-octane football they are playing, and then now injuries, and they having to play on Wednesday, Saturday. That's something majority of that squad is not used to. And even those who are used to it are unavailable, like Tonali and 1 or 2 other players. So for them, I would say they are punching above their weight, and that has been their undoing. And you can clearly see that the players seem very tired. If you watch Bruno Guimaraes, his last 4 or 5 performances, he hasn't been impressive. And Newcastle have lost 4 of their last 5 games. Yeah. The only win they've had is against Fulham, and they've lost to teams below them. Yep. So they are very good at home actually, and that's why nobody expected them to lose against Nottingham Forest. So it's really a bad time for them to travel. For them, they will need to find a way to stop conceding, and that's the prime thing. And I remember saying earlier in the season that in as much as Guimaraes has been playing in that number 6 role, he's not a DM. And if they wanted to move further forward, if they wanted to have a solid team to constantly challenge for top 4, they would need someone who is more like a destroyer, break up play and then give it to them. And because now Guimaraes, because of the demands attacking wise and defensively, he's not being at his best. Yeah. And that's an imbalance in that team. Tonali is also not available. So for Newcastle, I don't know how they'll stop the rot, because going to Anfield is a daunting task. Right. I mean, for Liverpool, after back-to-back draws against United and Arsenal, they bounced back against Burnley. And yes, VAR reduced the scoreline one way or the other, but I really want to go there. So for Newcastle, I do think that they will have to find it in within them to make it harder for them to get beat. Yes, there have been some impressive performances from players like Miley, and Longstaff. They have some returning players from injury, so I think they would have to galvanize that squad. Go to Anfield. You look at the Manchester United template, somewhat the Arsenal template. Make it as difficult as possible for Liverpool.
Okay.
Do not concede within the first 15 or 20 minutes, else it throws the game plan out of the window and it could be a long night for them. If they can stop the ruts, I do think they can salvage something and then January see who they can bring in and then be on that trajectory for the new year.
All right, so let me get your thoughts on Newcastle and Eddie Howe. It's been a very rotting few weeks for them. Like Emmanuel said, 4 losses out of 5. They got absolutely done by Chris Wood, an ex-Newcastle player, in the last game. What's the plan for Anfield, a ground where lots of the better teams have struggled to cope? How can Eddie Howe get his boys to stay afloat in that game at Anfield?
I think Nubo has really said it all, that this is a team that it looks like they are a bit tired. Look, we're giving them all their props for overachieving when Eddie Howe joined, that they only signed Bruno Guimaraes. They started flying up the table. A full season with him, playing once a week. They got to the Carabao Cup final. They finished in the top 4. So their regression is not unexpected. It's difficult to play those extra games in the Champions League. Now look at the injury crisis they are facing. It's very difficult. I don't know how they can really stop Liverpool. I believe the only hope they can have is that the bad Darwin Núñez shows up. And Darwin Núñez's goal just summarizes everything about him. This is a player you can see there's talent.
Yeah.
He can make things happen. But more often than not, he's just, I don't know what possesses him or what happens. It's just like he has a brain fart and just makes some crazy decisions and mistakes. Because look, I was watching a video just a few days ago about all the chances Salah has created in the Premier League. You know, that kind of thing. And there's a lot of them where Darwin Núñez is on the end of them. And if Darwin Núñez played a normal game, they didn't call it a normal game, he would have scored half of those. But more often than not, I don't know what possesses him. He just, it's very unfortunate because there's a player there. Cody Gakpo is really struggling. Diaz, I believe, is injured now. He wasn't really there. Jota is back. He scored. So the Liverpool front line, again, look, it looks like every team that we are talking about in the title race, the front line is just, you don't know which front line will appear on which day. The only consistent player for Liverpool has been Salah. He keeps showing up. He keeps creating chances. If he's not creating chances, he's scoring. But the rest of his teammates, you can't be sure which ones will show up. So that's what Newcastle have to hope and pray, that Salah is feeding people who don't feel like scoring on the day. And they are able to chances they'll get. Because Liverpool do always give up a chance or two. They concede the first goal very regularly. Then they rouse themselves and get that comeback because they will create those chances. But if you take your chances and you are lucky, because that is all it is against Liverpool, because the chances will come. You can't stop it. It's inevitable. So you just have to hope that they are on their bad day and you get results. So that's what I can say. And it's very unfortunate we are seeing this for a lot of the teams, but this is a pattern we are seeing with a lot of the top teams. They will create. It's just that whether they want to score on the day, which is in question. There's very few days where they'll come and they won't create anything. So for me, I believe Liverpool, they look a bit more fallible because you always know that there's that goal to be considered. And we know that, look, right now, Robertson is not around. We know Trent is going to move into midfield. So there's a lot of pressure on Van Dijk and Konate because Matip is also out for the season. Joe Gomez has come in and done very well, but there's a lot of pressure on Van Dijk and whoever he's playing with to control the game. They have the best keeper in the Premier League behind them, luckily for them, which also helps a lot. But the chance will come, and you have to take it. So Newcastle do have a chance, but on the probability, I expect them to lose it and lose it badly.
Interesting one. Safo, let's start the Liverpool side of things. We've seen them through December. They've played some good football. Yeah. Earlier in the month, there was some European football they had to deal with, and I think that they deal with the Europa League games very quickly, easily. They've had Fulham, they've had Man United, they've played West Ham in the League Cup, they've played Arsenal, very good.
Arsenal, United,
Burnley. If you are Jurgen Klopp and you look at Newcastle and the kind of run they are on, how will you perceive Newcastle as a team that's hoping to come to Anfield and maybe do a West Ham from last night? Or you look at Newcastle and say that they are under pressure. They probably can't stand the heat. So let's just go out there, get goals, and go home and sleep.
As a manager of Jurgen Klopp's caliber, you take each game as if it's your last game. You go for the kill. I don't think Jurgen Klopp is going to go into this game thinking Newcastle are coming for some honky-dory tour on Anfield and going. They won the win as well. So as Jurgen Klopp, you look at this game like Newcastle wants the win, but we have to show them we are better than them. They just started coming to the Champions League since the 90s. We've been doing this. We won it in 2019. And it's also the opportunity for certain players to show that they do belong, because now Jurgen Klopp has a plethora of attackers to choose from. What is going to be the perfect combination? We know Salah is a constant. Is it going to be Gakpo, Diaz, Jota, Diaz, Gakpo, Nunes? It's sort of a justify. So, and you see Jota coming in, then you see that the efficiency Nunes was lacking. Jota is providing. Look at the angle he scored from.
I think Jota is even more efficient than Mohamed Salah. I'm not going to lie. Just based on the chances they
for
get.
a very short player.
For me, I think Jota is very efficient.
Yeah, and for a very short player, he's also good in the air.
Yeah.
So if I'm Darwin Nunes, they bought you with good money. I remember when Darwin Nunes came in the Premier League, it was, he's going to be better than Haaland. That was a rivalry that was dead on arrival. Yeah. So it's an opportunity for players to put their foot forward. It's just like everyone has poo-pooed on Newcastle in this analysis. I mean, you can't blame them. They are heavily dependent on a player like Anthony Gordon, who they didn't even have last season. And I remember there was one game they played in the midweek, and Eddie Howe said, the kid can't run. He can't run anymore. He's virtually played almost every game. He can't run. You have Isak going in and out, Wilson coming in and out. You can never trust a player like Miguel Almiron. Joe Willock, who could have given them a stability in the middle, is also not there. They have to depend on an 18-year-old Miley. Longstaff, who
also
is
in and out.
Yeah, Longstaff is the kind of player you use during relegation battle and things like that. It's not. I don't think that was the vision going into this season. So yes, they are wounded, but we've seen a lot of funny things happen in the Premier League. You wouldn't think Leeds were going to be that team to have ended Liverpool's. It's a game they cannot joke about, and I think currently, just like we've said, even if City wins their game in hand, they are 2-3 points behind Liverpool. You would want to make emphasis. You would want to make a statement that you are and this is an interesting statistic for you. So per ESPN, Liverpool are 8 points behind based on VAR decisions. Wow. So they're a team who would not want. They always have these compilations about how in previous seasons refereeing decisions didn't go for them. That's why they couldn't win the league. They would need to put that behind them. And then the time is now. Make a statement win. And because in your previous two games, you were expected to beat Manchester United. You didn't beat Manchester United.
And they drew it.
You were 4 against 1 Declan Rice, and you missed it. And Arsenal fans are now saying Declan Rice is something. So the onus is on Liverpool, and I don't think they are going to disappoint. Just like the guys have said, I've always said I don't believe in stats because the game is what happens there. But this time, if no one, Liverpool should take the lead.
All right, Emmanuel. Just finally, if you are Jurgen Klopp, would you start thinking about what happens to the front line without Mo Salah? Would you bench Mo Salah just to see what he has, for the next month?
I don't think he'll do that. Mohamed Salah hates to sit on the bench. He hates to even come off. Even when you are winning 7-0, he doesn't want to come off. And I think he would want to leave for the AFCON with at least a goal or something. So for me, I think he's going to play. He's probably going to play 90 minutes and get it over and done with, and then he leaves for the AFCON. For Jurgen Klopp, I think he'll be very happy that Diogo Jota is back, because you can't trust Gakpo, you can't trust Nunes. Outside Salah, I think Jota is the more consistent player. For me, as I said, I think he's a very efficient finisher. Left foot, right foot in there, even for his height, as Kwame Safu said. So I think Jurgen Klopp plays him. Now, Jota, the issue is, can he remain fit?
That's the
issue. Because Salah...
So would you want Klopp to give him a start or another run off the bench?
It's a wounded Newcastle. I think he should start him. Diaz hasn't really been himself. With the whole kidnapping with his dad and everything, he hasn't really shown the promise he earlier shown last season and 2 seasons before that. You don't really know what you are going to get from Gakpo or Nunez. So for me, I think in a game where you want to make a statement, especially with a team that is somewhere in and around close to you, you would want to put your best foot for it. So for me, Diaz starts, Salah starts, probably Nunez or Gakpo in the middle, whoever it is.
You see, Klopp's got big decisions to make ahead of that game. It's Liverpool versus Newcastle at Anfield, coming up this weekend as the 2023 calendar year wraps itself up, or as we draw the curtains on that one. This is the Premier League preview show. We'll take another break. When we come back, we'll get into the debate. We'll talk a bit about transfers, because it's the month of January. The window will open again for teams to add or subtract, if you like, and as they fine-tune their teams for another crack towards the second half of the season. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. This is the Premier League preview show on Citi TV. Welcome back. This is the Premier League preview show on Citi TV. My name is Nathan Kwa. My guest, Emmanuel Nobo Kwame Safo, in studio. Susu Graham joining us on the Zoom. Let's get into the final part of our show. Let's get into the debate. Welcome to the debate. This is the Premier League preview show. We're asking, what do clubs have to look out for before signing a player in January? What do clubs have to look out for before signing a player in January? Remember, on the 1st of January 2024, they call it the mid-season transfer window. Some call it the winter transfer window. It will open for about a month for teams to fine-tune their squad and prepare for the second half of the season. So we're asking, what should Premier League clubs look out for before signing a player? So maybe I can take your thoughts to start with. If you were advising clubs on signing players in the January window, what should they look out for as they step into the market before the second half of the season takes shape?
Well, the first thing is clubs should plan very well, and you should have done most of your recruitment in the summer. So what you are doing right now is you are fine-tuning the squad. So let's give an example for a Liverpool. Liverpool have got their midfield ready. You might say, maybe we have a midfielder that's a bit injury-prone. Let's bring in an extra midfielder who can cover the 6 and cover the 8, just so that if there's another injury, we have someone to kind of fill in the role. You're not bringing in a transformational player. It's very rare that you bring in a transformational player. I think Virgil van Dijk is the last player I can think of who joined in January and was transformational, Okay. But look at the fee they paid for him, because usually January transfers are also inflated in terms of the cost, because finding a replacement mid-season is also much harder for the selling team.
Okay.
So nobody wants to sell their players. So the type of player you're buying, you're looking for someone who can complement the squad, fill a need. He's trying, and usually you're probably buying a player who gives you a little bit of extra cover. Because look at Trossard last season. He came in and did very well. I believe he joined in January. He fits into the squad because he's a player who can play multiple positions. We saw him used as a number 9. We saw him play on the left. We've seen him play as a number 8. So that's the type of player you're looking for in January. You're not looking for a player who's trying to transform. Because look at a player like Enzo, who was brought in to be transformational in January. He's not really settled. And that's because it's the chaos of the team. It's teams that don't plan well who end up trying to make transformational signings in January. Good teams don't generally do that. Unless it's the case where it's like a player who's so impressive suddenly becomes available and you're like, there's no way we are living without this player. Like, we have to get it. But in general, transformational players do not come in January. So you are trying to buy a player who's going to complement your team and just keep your team ticking until the next summer, because what it's looking like is you're probably going for a player that feels like maybe someone's gotten hurt, someone's form is dipping a bit, so you just want a little bit of competition. So don't try and get that transformational player. Don't buy too many players. You probably need 1 or 2 players just to complement the squad and round it out and fill in the tiny little gaps at the edge of the squad. You're not trying to plug in a hole in your spine, because if that's what you're doing, it's going to be a very difficult season, or you're already in trouble, which is why you're trying to plug a hole in your spine.
Interesting. Thank you, Susu. Guys, what do clubs need to look out for?
Well, for me, I think before the season starts, every team sets out with objectives. So in January, you look how far below or how far above you are of your objectives, and that would actually determine what you want to do or what you don't want to do. So if you're a team in and around 15 battling relegation, you need to see, okay, how far away am I from the relegation zone?
Okay.
Can I bring in a player who can, let's say, add something, make a bit of difference, give us that extra push to be further away from the bottom? If you're a team in and around 6th, 7th, can I bring in a player who can push us further? You also have to take consideration the teams who have a lot of injuries. How soon are those key players going to return from injury? Because if you sign a player, you don't sign him just for 6 months. You are signing him for a long period.
Yeah.
So in as much as you are bringing in a player to fix an immediate solution, you also have to see how he impacts the team or how he fits into the team long term. So for me, those are the key things you would have to look at. Suso has made some very good examples with Liverpool or Arsenal. You look at Arsenal, you would probably look at a player like Ivan Toney because you need goals.
Okay.
Your strikers are not scoring as much, neither are your wingers. So those are the kind of dynamics. Your objectives you've set out, how far away you are from them will determine who and what you look at.
Okay.
I mean, there are other teams that have met unforeseen circumstances. So a team like Spurs, it's a typical team that whose backline just disappeared because Van der Ven and Romero left, and Ange does not have trust in a player like Eric Dyer. He doesn't even play him at all.
Yeah.
So if you're a team in 15th to 20th, you would need you can probably go in for a player like Eric Dyer. Maybe.
But would Eric Dyer want to play for a club that's
the conversation.
That would be, but then and Ange Postecoglou has said it that they would need to go into the market and then get defenders in. So find it, because it doesn't seem Van der Ven is going to come in. And if you have a player like Romero, who in discipline,
Romero, he's got injured.
he's got injured.
Yes.
If he's not getting injured, he's getting red cards.
suspended.
So you need to get players in, and you look like teams like Manchester United, where you can see that the depth in certain positions is not as they foresaw, because when you're starting a season, I think teams have objectives and what they think would happen. A player like Rasmus Højlund is just a 20-year-old who has this weight of expectation on him. You are not going to use Anthony Martial because he's never proven reliable. They can try and get in another body. I mean, they tried that last season with this Dutch player. You don't need to.
The oldest like January signing of all time.
You don't need a Virgos. You just need to find a player who can get that 1 or 2 for you but luckily for them, they are out of the Champions League, so maybe that's not a priority. You look at a team like Chelsea, they want to if Pochettino said that he doesn't care going into the transfer.
But who else do you want to buy? I mean, a team like Chelsea, who do they need?
I think they need a striker. They need another number 9. Nkunku, Broja are all players they don't trust, and that's the truth. I mean, they have the money, and that's going to be another problem, because that means you have a very big squad. You have a very big squad.
Their squad is past 33 now.
Yeah,
but
that's a lot of
Pochettino said that in his past. If they have to go, they would go into it. So there is that. But sometimes, like Susu said, about how it can decapitate. I know we are talking about the Premier League, but an example is Barcelona going in for Getafe's central midfielder like that. It's going to be hard to get, but then you can see that's a deficiency the team is lacking, because Oriol Romeu is not that good. Pedri is always out. Gavi is also injured. So that's like a need. So a player like Ivan Toney, just like you said, Arsenal, it shouldn't even be a bargain. The only problem they might face with that is the Euros. And is Toney going to get the start in a team like Arsenal?
Because I think whoever you are signing, that player, most often when you sign players in January, they are not like first choice players. And players will have to understand that I'm coming in probably to fill a role or hold an end. A player like Ivan Toney, I wonder if he would want to.
I think he would want to go to a team like Arsenal. Arsenal is struggling for goals, so that means that you will get some form of opportunity to play. But you also look like there might be a tall order, because there's Nketiah before.
There's Gabi Jesus,
Nketiah.
And you also have to look at their style of play, as your player, your attributes. How does that fit in? So there's so many other things to look at, which generally will not afford you the time to do all that. So it's as you said, it's very rare that you buy players who are transformational. You probably just want to buy in, and sometimes it's a hit, sometimes it's going to be a hit.
Just on Ivan Toney, I wanted to make a point. I believe that in his case, he's going to come in and end up being the starting striker because we're looking at a situation.
Is it immediately or over
striker,
time?
Eventually.
Okay.
However long it takes, because we are looking at a situation where the starting striker has 2 goals. Ivan Toney probably believes that, look, I scored 20 goals last season, more than Jesus did.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
You know, I'm probably a better finisher. That if I'm given enough time, I'm going to displace this guy from the team. Which is probably not the type of signing you want to make in January. You want to do that kind of signing in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess in Ivan Toney's case, maybe it's a bit special because we all know his ban. So he's not played yet this season and that kind of stuff. But when I look at how Brentford are playing, I would advise Arsenal to not go for Ivan Toney because if Brentford were 9th and sure that they would survive, they might let him go for less. But in a situation where Brentford have lost their last 4 games, they are struggling to get wins.
They also have injuries.
I don't believe Toney will come cheap. So I believe Arsenal should stay away. Not because he's a bad player, but I believe the timing is not ideal for Brentford to sell, which is going to inflate their price and make it even.
It's the same problem Chelsea face.
You are going to lose money you could use on other players. You know?
Okay, interesting stuff, guys. So I think we've laid out the checklist for the clubs, you know, in terms of the kind of business they want to do. Are Liverpool interested in any players?
For Liverpool,
should they be interested?
Okay, well, I mean, not in January, but if you look at long term and the progression of Trent, I think arguably maybe by next season he'll be starting as a midfielder. I think they need to buy a proper right back. They need to buy a proper
not Joe
right
Gomez.
They need a body.
He's been impressive. I mean,
I
I
mean,
hate to say it, but,
Joe Gomez
but I think they'll need a proper right back, and then it puts some balance in the team. You get, Endo is 30.
What, Thiago Alcantara, I don't think he's there long term.
I
forgotten about him.
I forgot about him.
I
But
saw
it looks
it
like Jurgen Klopp made the decision that he's going to move past him. I think his contract runs out in the summer. Right?
Okay.
You don't go in for an Artabello. That's the sign.
I think that's bad business.
He's learned his lessons from that.
You don't
All right.
go in for.
All right, still watching the Premier Preview Show. We'll wrap it up in a second. But let's have a look at the fixtures once again. Let me see if I can squeeze some predictions out of the guys. Teams are in action this Saturday and Sunday, guys. So the fixtures are there. You can give us any amount of predictions you want before we wrap it up on 2023. Any predictions?
The obvious ones.
Yes.
City's beating Sheffield.
Okay, City.
Villa is beating Burnley.
Yeah. After losing their way strangely at Old Trafford.
Taking a 2-goal lead and
They literally give it away.
yeah. But the Forest United game is going to be very
That
interesting.
should be a good one.
It's going to be very interesting.
Okay.
I think Spurs Bournemouth will also be very interesting.
Okay. Spurs won the return game.
Yes.
I remember.
But
That was when they were
Bournemouth are on
riding
the
high.
up.
Yeah, Bournemouth. Yeah.
Bournemouth they are picking up
impressive form.
So
Yeah.
So
they
I
won
do
at
think
Old Trafford. Then they beat they beat Nottingham Forest.
they beat
Fulham.
Fulham.
They beat Fulham. So 3 wins for them.
West Ham
Interesting.
Brighton, another interesting.
That would also be
Yeah,
interesting.
Brighton did the number on Spurs. I enjoyed watching that game. Was really good.
And West Ham spoiled Brighton's party earlier this season with that 3-1, 4-1 or 3-1.
They had about 3 or 4 shots in the game and
then
they won.
So finally, just give us a few predictions. 1 or 2. I don't know which ones you want to give.
I think I will say the matches that are interesting to watch. I'm looking at the Crystal Palace Brentford game because it looks like 2 teams that are playing very badly are meeting. So I think someone is going to catch a break in that match. That would be very interesting to watch. That's where my mind is. But look, I expect that, like Safu said, Sheffield have not won away all season, and they are going to Man City. Like that one is there's no point watching. Many we know they are struggling. You know, there are some matches that let's forget about. I think the Spurs Bournemouth match will be very interesting.
Okay.
I think I want to say Aston Villa will also probably get the win. Then let's see Everton and Wolves
That would be
because
very interesting. Wolves are also in
Wolves
good
are
form.
picking up form and Everton's form is sliding.
Yeah.
And look at and Luton are also picking up form. So now that -10 is starting to look a bit scary for Everton. I expect them to survive, but the -10 will hit them a lot. So
Okay.
I don't think the big teams have too many difficult games this weekend. It's the mid-table teams that will see the blows being traded, but for the big teams, they should all be able to win quite easily.
Okay.
If they do what they are meant to. Even Manchester
Even
United.
Man United. We'll see about that. All right. Thank you, Susu. Thank you, Emmanuel. Thank you, Kwame Safu. Thank you, others, for watching. This has been the Premier League preview show on Citi TV. My name is Nathan Kwa. Thank you for watching, for being with us throughout 2023. The next time we'll see you, God willing, it will be 2024. and we'll talk some more Premier League football. Remember, the games are live on Citi 97.3 FM. Enjoy the games on radio. Watch the accompanying programs like this and Scorecard, and read the stories on citisportsonline.com. We'll catch you, God willing, 2024. Enjoy the rest of your holidays. Happy New Year, and see you later.